Raining again when the sun is out. This is the second time this is happening this week. Interesting, huh? Hello, everyone. Welcome to the City of Healing. This is your sister, Sunette Inter-Angela. Hope that everyone is having a beautiful Sunday. It was a beautiful, breezy, warm day. It's now drizzling a little bit. Looking forward to a nice, peaceful Sunday evening. Hope that you all are too. I just finished listening to David Icke's interview with Brian Rose. It was excellent. Not that I agree with everything that he said, but of course I've learned, and of course I've always been like this. I've been known to be a very great listener, and as my daughter would say, she has learned to listen to understand and not listen to reply. And it's not necessary for you to reply if someone wants you to listen to what they have to say. So listening and hearing is an excellent skill to have when you don't necessarily sit in judgment but hear the whole perspective of what someone has to say, which is for me easy to do. I'll listen, and I don't have to agree at all or understand, but I can listen and try to understand another person's perspective, and that's what I did. And some of the things that he said I've always thought anyway, and I've always said, if you look back at my other videos, I've said those things as well. And I'll start with this virus situation. I made videos when it first happened. I even did a video back, I think it was late December, that something was in the air and it wasn't natural. If you go back and look, it's there. So from the beginning, I felt that this was, some type of spell, some type of, I don't want to say hoax, but something wasn't right about it. And I felt, and I said then, the more that we believe it, the more that we accept it, the more of a reality that it will be. And that's what has happened. So it is a reality in a lot of people's lives, So not standing in judgment or not telling you to believe or not to believe whether it is or whether it isn't, but just my chain of thought of the situation from the beginning. And I still basically feel the same way. I feel that life, as we see it, as we know it, is based on perception. It's based on ego, because myself, even with my struggles, I wouldn't want to be anyone else except who I am right now, all my flaws. I am so happy. I see a dragonfly going by. Anyway, I'm so happy to be Black, African American, the skin tone I am. Wouldn't want to be any other skin tone. I'm so happy to be female. Don't want to be male. Don't want to change my sex. I don't want to be nothing else other than who I am right now. All flaws indeed. Not saying that I'm perfect, because I'm not. And I don't aspire to be perfect. I only aspire to be the best that I can be. And as I mentioned, this spell that this earth is under, this spell that we have created or let happen to us, is based basically on our perception and our ego and the government of men. And I told my sister, I had this conversation with her. I said, if we find the face of the government, and she started to name the governors, I was like, oh no, they're just basically front men. We've never seen the face of government. We've never asked to see the face of the real government, to find the head of the dragon. And once we find the head of the dragon, we can decide what we want to do with it from there. But, with these protests and everything, I understand it. I'm not against it. If I was in a situation or felt the need to protest, I would do it as well. And I support them and I applaud them for that if they feel that's right to do, to stand up for what they believe. I would agree with that as well. I empathize with that. But this Black Lives Matter situation, you know, when David Icke talked about that today, I was a little pushed off by a little bit, coming from him because he's a white male. First of all, I was a little offended, but I still knew in the back of my mind that, you know, there is no such thing as race. There's no such thing as sex, female or male. You know, it's ego. It's all ego. And we are to play into it. Life is a stage. So we play into our characters. We're in these bodies for a temporary amount of time to learn a lesson, to break spells. And we haven't for centuries and centuries and years, we haven't been able to do that because we haven't accepted that we are all just basically one, and come together and realize that it's difficult because you identify so well and we've been traumatized so much. And, you know, these containers, I know if we accept that we are no race, we will say there is no ancestors. But spirit does have memory. And our bodies, if you believe in reincarnation, so to speak, we lose these physical bodies and come to another form. And basically we are our ancestors, if you believe in ancestors. And that's the way the ancestor spirit conceives, if you don't believe that we are no race and we are basically spiritual beings having these temporary physical experience in this stage of life. And it's so hard to go outside and say, you know, I'm not black, I'm not female, I shouldn't stand up for what I believe, I shouldn't respond to being abused, treated unfairly, killed, manipulated, having feelings, wanting revenge for what was done to my ancestors, etc., etc. It's so difficult to step outside of that and not accept that you are who you are. I am that I am. That's what we feel. And not saying that we aren't all one, because basically we will, because spirit doesn't have a color, it doesn't have a body. The spiritual world is so, it's complex to us, and though it exists while we still exist, it's difficult to explain how we can actually be spiritual beings having physical experiences without knowing who we truly are, and still yet identifying with who you are physically at this very moment. And so knowing that, when I was listening to David Icke speak, I thought it was profound to come back and basically contemplate that and accept that as well, in order to win this war, in order to, because it's a spiritual war, in order to win it as a people, not just with my black people who I highly identify with, who I highly love and accept. And we've been through so many traumas. How to sever that and accept everyone as is difficult to do, because the other people are not going to respond like that. So how do we protect ourselves? How do we convince others that we are one? You know, how are you going to convince a KKK member that you are one with them, even though you know that and feel that? You know, it's a difficult situation, of course. And, you know, not that I believe that it's the end of the world. Whether it is or not, you know, I don't control that, of course. But when I look around at nature, and I do that a lot, nature is not struggling. They are not arguing with the flowers and saying that, just because you're a flower don't means I'm less than a tree. Birds aren't, fighting, even though the blackbirds, they kind of spicy. I break up a lot of blackbird fights quite often, but really they just, I think it's a game, and then they're back friends later on. But anyway, nature is not struggling like human beings, and perhaps nature are the true beings, because humans aren't just being. They struggle with ego, and we can't accept that we are all just one. And I can identify and understand why we can't. It's a struggle for me too. It really is, as I just explained the reason why. And although some people do get it, and we see the blending of the races, but I'm not sure if that's the reason for it, or it's just because of personal preferences, other than understanding that we are under, or all basically from the same source. I don't know. So we can't so much so live in the ego, or can we? So that's a harsh lesson to consider. And I enjoyed the talk with I didn't have the talk, David Rose did, with David Icke, and Brian Rose rather, with David Icke. He is a different kind of thinker, but in general I think that he is a good person that thinks differently, and he has thought differently for a very long time. I just became really familiar with him maybe a year ago, but I just recently started listening to him within the last few months, and I automatically could, for some reason, identify with some of the things that he said, even though some things were basically hard pill to swallow. But I think that he's coming from a good place, and even though he's a white male, I do believe that he is coming from a good place. And even if we are our ancestors and we still hold the traumas from the past, if you can still understand the untrusting, the anger, the frustration of trying to identify and accept opinions from other races other than your own, it's a big step to take. And so for right now, I think that I still will identify, because it's here who I'm suited up to be, a black female. But how we break this spell, it's going to be a difficult one, because right now we're struggling with protecting ourselves from some allegedly racist people. And not to mention the so-called virus that exists, and testing and vaccinations. What are we going to do? Like I said, someone is playing a very interesting game with us. That's what I've felt. And I've told my children, and they think I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs too. I was like, there are watchers, so don't be surprised if, AI, artificial intelligence, was already here, and it's been here even before us. Do we really know that it wasn't? So it's an interesting phenomenon. It's an interesting day. It's an interesting time. 2020, very significant, great growth and understanding for mankind and womankind. Like I said, because nature is not struggling at all. And I'll continue to grow as well. And I was like, well, if they change, then I can change, and we can do this. But you know, how that's going to happen is difficult. Now, be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world, but if you keep getting hit, you know, what do, right? Something else to think about and to grow from. Always time for growth and understanding and acceptance, and knowing that, you know, spirit doesn't have a race or sex, and maybe God doesn't, or source doesn't either. You know, some will argue differently, and that's okay. I will listen to what they have to say as well. But I am going to continue to live the way I live, and, you know, take it day by day with the same understanding that basically, all in all, we are of the same, from the same consciousness, from the same source, with different intricate pieces to play out this game, this learning, this teaching that we call life here on planet Earth. The games continue, the saga continues. What else? What else is there to come? What else is there to learn? Just be prepared, you know, to expect the unexpected, to learn from it, and stay ready. You stay ready, you won't have to get ready. Be prepared for the unexpected. Anyway, just something to think about. Anyway, thanks for visiting the city. Hope that y'all have a beautiful day. And remember, we are from the same source, from the same consciousness, with different intricate pieces to learn more about ourselves and the human race and the earth and the spirit world, as above, so below. Anyway, thanks for visiting the city. I hope that you have a great evening. Take care.